All right. Hey, what's up, Polar fam? This is Shibbear over here with Polar going into our weekly community AMA that we have every week to answer any questions that you guys may have, go over some of the information from the last week, and go over some of the things that are to come. I would like to start out by saying quick shout out to all the new team members here with Polar, whether they are official Polar team members or just have different roles. We've had a ton of new additions on there. We're going to work to get everyone either a place where they can talk on an AMA to maybe explain a little bit about themselves and how they got into this position that they are in, whatever that might be that they are doing with Polar. Or if they are not too comfortable with speaking English, or maybe the time zones are different, they can always just send me a little write-up and I'll be able to go into who each and everybody is and what their roles are with Polar going forward. So I would like to go over that as well. And then also just a little change due to just some personal life obligations is the community AMAs I'm going to run on Wednesdays now. So this will be Tuesday, obviously. Today's Tuesday. The next one will be Wednesday, June 15th. Same time, that 8 p.m. UTC. So right here now is the same time, same place, all that good stuff there. Just one day later so that I can engage in some of this other things that I'm doing outside of crypto and outside of the internet world that'll allow me to kind of just get a little bit of a detachment every once in a while, which I think is a great thing for all of us to be able to do here. And as we all kind of are pouring in here, we did learn that there was a little bit of an update here, this version 3.1 that has come out. And if you have not seen the announcements yet, this version 3.1 was officially deployed yesterday. I know there are still a couple bugs with some people to which their nodes are showing in their wallet, but it's just not uploading under the My NFT section. We are aware of that and actively seeking to resolve it. Fortunately, your nodes are still there, that you are still accumulating rewards. Everything is functioning as it should be. The biggest issue with that is you can't claim, and I know that is a stressor for some, so allow us to get that resolved as soon as possible. I think ideally it's going to be resolved obviously sooner rather than later. It's only a few that have popped up here and there. I think the majority are still mostly okay. So it did likely come in some aspect of the migration. I'm not exactly sure what would have caused that because I did have nodes from before our last update to this one and all of mine rolled over. And I know most people's are the same way, so I'm not too sure what may have occurred. But that's why we have some developers to look into that and get that resolved as quick as possible. We've also introduced the Degen Lucky Box, which is basically a 1 in 2 chance, right? So you can either get a Uswaye NFT or an Everest NFT by utilizing that aspect of this version 3.1. You can interact with those on our DApp. You can get all the prices and information, and once you get that exposed, that Lucky Box, reveal, it'll add that to your NFT list. Take care of that with you from there. We've also added the Polar Lottery, which many of you have already engaged in. Basically, that's a way to add in, lower amounts of Polar for the potential of a larger prize. And the last case was, the first one was an Everest and the last one was an Olympus. So those will be selected. That winner will be selected here as soon as possible as well. And I have heard the question of, hey, where does that excess Polar go to? It follows the same exact guidelines as a claim would, for example, and which 5% goes to the liquidity pool, 5% goes to the treasury, and then the remainder goes right back into the rewards pool. So by engaging with the lottery, you are directly benefiting the protocol because you're adding to the rewards pool, also giving a little bolster to the liquidity and the treasury. But there is still no official team tax under that, by the way, so there is still the maximum amount of funds going towards the rewards pool, the treasury, and the liquidity, trying to get those bolstered up as we navigate through the coming days, weeks, and hopefully not months of this downturn, that hopefully we can get a good little return to a high point in the Polar protocol sooner rather than later. I do know that Enor is working through that version 4.0 with all the new developers and everything like that. That should encourage a good difference, and it should allow for a good little positive change there to occur. We've also considered other aspects of it that'll allow, for the potential of a major rebound. If everything else fails, we'll kind of go into that as we need to. But ideally, we just want the protocol to succeed and to build these things that we have built to take care of those who invested within us, within our community here, and allow us all to ideally prosper in the long term. I do know that there has been many of us that are significantly down over the last, I guess honestly, month and a half at this point, month to month and a half, and that is a huge stressor for some, as the token went from like that $2.50 to $3 range down to where it is now at that 7-cent range. We are clear that it is not ideal. We're not here saying that that's okay. We're not here trying to say that that's, reasonable for those who were invested with us. But we do understand that it does take some time to rebuild a good asset for the protocol itself to allow it to truly be a turnaround, right? And there are several ways you can manipulate that artificially via buyback, stuff like that. And we've kind of gone into some of the issues of buybacks and what they can bring. But I do think there could be a time and place for some stuff like that in the future, as long as we're trending in the right way. I would love to formulate a strategy to get our supply back down closer to that 1 million mark rather than the 3 million that we're currently at, because obviously higher supply is not ideal for the token price, just from the little market cap logic there and the token price action. So we are aware of all those things. As you've seen in the chats, we have added many more people to the team who are motivated and willing and encouraged to work hard towards the next steps of Polar. So that is the the major updates that we have coming along here. So that version 4.0, if you have not seen the Polar Nodes roadmap just yet, go to our announcements page in the Discord. It's the latest announcement. It's the last paragraph before the @everyone. You can kind of look at the little roadmap that we have going on there, including that 4.0, which will be like a gamification effort to the protocol that'll allow us to encourage more money to be brought into the protocol, but also sustain the node aspect. And I think Oxy does have the Twitter AMA up and running. I'm not sure how that is communicating with us on here. Hopefully it's still pretty good. I want to test it, but I don't want to mess it up as far as sound is concerned. So if anybody is in the Twitter one and or this one, feel free, obviously, request to speak, whether you have a question or you can just help me ensure that this Polar AMA is working on the Twitter side or on our side in Discord. I don't know if they can hear me on Twitter, to be perfectly honest, and I'm a little nervous that if I click on this, it's going to be kind of a mess as far as the vocals are concerned. So if anyone is in one or the other, feel free to let me know how that is working. The numbers are still going up in the Polar AMA on the Twitter, so I would hope they can hear something. But obviously, let me know if there is an issue there so we can begin to resolve those issues accordingly. I am going to share it on my Twitter as well, my Shiblord Twitter. Sweet. So I did just hear that I am able to be heard on Twitter. I guess the next, the next big thing is, can you guys hear each other on Twitter? So that'll be the next step. So if anyone does have any question, or if you just like to be a little test dummy here to see if we can hear each other via both aspects of this. Okay, yep, so they can hear me on Twitter. I just want to see if if you guys can hear each other between the two. From there, ideally that'll be fantastic, but that was the same issue that we had last time, where some could not hear each other and then the questions were not getting through. So there is a slight delay. That's fine. That's not a huge deal there. All right, cool. So I think I got over most of the updates for the protocol. I know that there have been many of questions to jump up throughout the chats throughout the week. So please request to speak if you do have questions, comments, concerns. This is, again, my opportunity to reach out to you guys directly, be able to talk to you through here and address any concerns that you might have, as well as any potential questions or just general information about the protocol that you are so engaged on, to allow us to literally have a one-on-one with the community. So please feel free to get us through that there, as I kind of branch forward to try to find the channel of the AMA Questions Weekly. I'm going to start at the bottom and just kind of move up here. Again, at any point, just feel free to request to speak. Now, how do I navigate if somebody has a question on Twitter? I guess I'll get to that here in just a minute. By Snow Tiger Ragnarok, where do we expect the price to be of Polar token? And if you have engaged with me in the past, Snow Tiger, I don't love to talk about the price action, except that obviously acknowledging that we are down and that's not ideal. Higher price would be better. There are various ways to accomplish that. Literally but you need the demand to be greater than the emissions going out. That's kind of that first and foremost. That's a priority that I would like to address before we can formulate real strong burn protocols with us. Because if let's do some quick math here, $2 million from the Treasury, or that would be, or 2 million burning 2 million polar would cost about 140,000 from the Treasury. That would be fantastic, right? Let's just say we could just do that right now, which we technically could. We have the funds to do it, and that would, directly bolster the price by, I guess, probably about 67%, right? Because you're reducing the circulating supply at that point. The main issue with that is, what are we doing? We are literally spending money for exit liquidity if the the supply out is still greater than the demand going in. So there are ways to navigate it, which are proper and very realistic, but we do need to have a positive trend on the protocol itself. And we're getting to the point that people, particularly on the beginning of weeks, usually Mondays, we are seeing a significant sell-off of just people who are coming in, selling their tokens, which they have every right to do so. You're never going to find me talking down on anybody that's looking to obtain their return on investment, even if it is a smaller portion than they expected. That is part of what we are here. This is the financial industry, decentralized finance. We're not in a bank or anything, but this is part of the game here. So I'm not going to discourage people from necessarily claiming and selling, but we do need to see a positive uptrend for me to formulate a very effective strategy that will allow us to rebound the token price directly. There are other ways to do it. Let's see. Okay, so I guess there are some requesting to speak on Twitter. I guess I'll try to find a way. I'm not sure how this is going to work, but let's pop into there and see. To speak on Twitter. I guess I'll try to find a way. Yeah, I don't like that. I'm sorry. That's going to end up. There's a delay on it. So on the Twitter side, if I pop it up on my own format, which just has to be on my phone because we're on Twitter Spaces on the desktop, that it is less ideal. You'll just hear me basically talking in an echo chamber, which I don't prefer. So we'll have to navigate how to make that happen, Oxy, in some way or another. Maybe I can figure that out here in a minute. But in the meantime, I'm going to bring up Ray J Monopoly. Ray J, whenever you accept the request, you will be live here on our community AMA for this week.
Yes. Hi, Shiba Bear. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
So far, so good. I would like to say, support the community. Believe in it from day one. I had it since the beginning. I was with you guys, and I believe strongly in currently what's going on in terms of finances. I have an idea regarding an additional method for mitigating selling pressure and increasing buying pressure by creating a separate category of a daily limit withdrawal. Because currently, right now, everyone has every right to sell whatever they invest in. Whatever they invest, they are able to sell their return. But I was saying, is it possible for an additional NFT to be, let's say, you can get the highest one, the volcano, the red volcano. I'm not gonna say the name, but the red volcano. You get the highest one, the 3,000 polar. You can buy it, but at a rate where you can only sell 1% back a day. So there's a limit, but as the coin continues to grow, as the value of the coin goes up, their 1% will be at a higher return. So that I don't want to compare projects. This is this other project that I've been watching, and they have a anti-dump mechanism put in place where the coin cannot be massively sold off in one day. Someone can only sell 1%. So hypothetically speaking, I was saying possibly is it feasible to create an NFT that rewards a higher daily polar payout, but can be compounded, and you can only take out 1% of that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. It's a very different philosophy and what people are generally used to, and I don't think it's a bad philosophy. So I'll even name drop a project out there, Drip, that has a larger whale tax if you try to sell, whatever percentage of the total thing, that it taxes you significantly, and then they max out at 365% APY for the year, so 1% a day effectively. So that could be a theoretical strategy to reduce emissions. I think there's going to have to be some very significant change in quite a few different things to really encourage the actual market, because we can limit what people can take out, we can increase taxes, we could reduce emissions, we could do everything under the moon to reduce emissions in a direct standpoint. But if there is no demand in, or no increased demand in, we are still going to be at the same problem, maybe just a little bit further down the road. So I think we need some fundamental changes in order to accomplish some of the bigger goals here. That is a decent idea, though.
Right, right. I agree. That makes sense. It's all about the community, how big the community grows, how fast people are aware of Polar, and how we can, build a bigger treasury. Right, right. But yeah, I just wanted to say that. I'm here. I'm always here. I always try to compound, but we all sell sometimes, right? But yeah, thank you for having me on, and you have a wonderful day.
Hey, appreciate you, man. So hopefully, let's see. Is my audio still going? It seems like when I play with my Discord to try to read these questions that it creates some other issues within the app. So hopefully you guys can hear me. I don't have anybody up here to read the questions off for me, to be perfectly honest. So in that sense, I just have to try to navigate through them. So we're back at the point that some can hear me and some can't. Love it. All right. I don't know. I guess that beats me. So we're going to bring up concealed carry. Discord, don't you fail me now, Discord. Concealed carry, if you can hear me, shout out to you, and you are live.
You can hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine, man. How are you?
I'm all right, man. Hey, I got a question for you. So, somebody like me, I currently have 17, and after today, I'll have 18 Everest nodes. Within the next 30 days, with recompounding, that's going to put me at around 30 Everest nodes. Or if I get Olympus's, fill in the blanks there. So at that point, I'll be earning 11 to 1,200 Polar tokens per day. Now, if I held up those tokens for a 30-day period or whatever, I could potentially have 35,000 tokens within a 1 month period with the holdings that I have. So I don't know if you consider me a shrimp or a whale compared. I haven't looked at all the wallets, but that seems like a significant amount of tokens that somebody can get. Being a person that has a large amount of tokens that we have, if the token price goes back up to $1, I could be dumping $35,000 a month off of the project. So I'm a firm believer that we should have some type of anti-whale mechanism, even for people like me. I plan on fully getting my investment back. I've invested quite a bit, but is there plans to have some type of anti-whale or even a tiered program to where if you want to sell off X amount of tokens, whether it be 5,000 tokens or whatever, to where you can only do 1,000 a day or whatever? Because if you limit it at 1,000 a day or 500 a day or 12, whatever you want to put it at, that's going to keep people from getting 150 different nodes, all Everest or all Mount, Olympus, and being able to destroy the prices. Are there any mechanisms you're planning on doing that so that people kind of cap themselves out?
Yeah, so I haven't heard anything from Enor as far as that discussion yet, but I think that would be at least a decent idea to consider, because we are going to have to do a full migration for version 4.0 anyway. So this does give us some room to make a major change if we did elect to do so. I think that is a relatively fair position. I know there are people that have 100 plus Everest out there. I'm not entirely sure how they would necessarily feel about that, but at the same point, if you got into the protocol in January and you've already ROI'd, 4 or 5, 10 times, whatever, then maybe you don't necessarily care a whole lot about the health of the protocol. And I don't want to mean that in like a facetious sort of way. That's just a realistic thing. Like, you're just going to get your pay. You have no more risk. You're doing your thing. But we also need to consider the people who have compounded since January, where they haven't, let's just say they've been in since January 11th when we came live, and then they never took profit. They just have been compounding and compounding and compounding, and now they have 100 Everests. Then we limit their potential return, sort of, but not really. So I think that's a more decent theory where you're not necessarily reducing their total emissions. You're just formulating it where it has to be over some period of time. And if you were to link it to each NFT itself, then it wouldn't matter if they decide to send 25 to 4 different wallets, for example. It would still be limitations per the NFT itself, which could be a possibility. I mean, I don't know the Solidity side of that and how all that would work, but I don't feel like it'd be impossible.
Well, I've been in a lot of different node I'm actually in a lot of different node projects, and you could do a partial cap for people that have 100 Everest or whatever. You could do a limit cap for tokens taken out per day, or you could do it based on an NFT where you have, out of your 100 nodes, you're allowed to have up to 50 Everest, and then anything past that 50 Everest, anything that you purchase would have a degradation period of whatever you want, whether it be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, to where, yes, you may start out with 35 Polar tokens a day, but after 3 months, it'll cut it down to 28 tokens. And then after another 3 months, it'll cut it down to 15 tokens, and then down to 10, and then 5. And then by the end of the year, that'll degrade itself out. So they'll still be able to do an ROI, get their return back, have a return on their investment past that. But it won't, it'll solve some of the sell pressure for the protocol as well. I've been a part of a lot of node projects, that have just killed themselves because they don't have any plans for the future. Strong block nodes, I have $40,000 invested in strong block nodes. It's basically worthless now. So I would like to see some type of mechanism like that, and I planned on getting 100 nodes. So that I'm technically saying that because it would hurt me by you implementing something like that, but I see the longevity of the project needing something like that in order to stay there. I'd rather have a partial portion of the project than have zero project. And moving past that, do we have any plans for is there anything that I haven't seen on Discord, anything that we can talk about as far as the long-term sustainability of the project? Do we have any plans in the future that need to be released here soon? Because, I know that the whole market sucks. Everybody needs to realize that. If you look at anything, everything is down 90% right now. So we're all just kind of holding on to our wallets. But what do we have for long-term sustainability? Are they planning on investing in any projects, other projects that pay out a certain percentage per day? Hence, you guys were talking about drip. You could earn 3% if you go into a drip garden and return that back into the sustainability fund for the project. Is there any plans like that we know of?
Yeah, so a few things there. I think what I'll bring up to you more later today is just a list of potential ideas. Maybe we can even bring different things to a vote, like a simple yes or no vote to the community, as far as just actual considerations to bring into that version 4.0, because there needs to be some sort of fundamental change. I think we're all very clear on that at this point, and what better time to do it than we're going to have a massive migration anyway. Honestly, that's the best time to do it. So that'll be something that we do need to consider on our end. As far as the long-term aspect, the long-term game plan is still very much in action, where even just today I put out an announcement where we invested $30,000 into another protocol as like their seed phase or their kind of pre-sale phase. And every one of those, that's kind of like that VC sort of methodology where we get a return for trying to get into these pre-sales or help fund different protocols to allow more to come back to Polar itself. For example, the issue with investing in direct protocols like Drip is they're also down just as much as just about anything else. So that's a little tricky, right? Are they going to rebound? Who knows? That's a very difficult thing to maneuver. There's some others out there, like Yield Nodes has been relatively steady. There's some bots out there that trade where you can get anywhere from 3 to 10% a month, which is something. It's not nothing, but it's not I don't think it's a cure-all. But I do think we do need to get a bit more creative in how we navigate through our current waters so we can get to our long-term plans.
Well, there's some projects. I'm actually not in this other project that I'm going to mention, but there's a project called Horde, and they actually have an algorithmic, basically stable project that stays in between $98 to $104. And even in the market that we have, the way that that's worked out is they've stayed right in that range within a couple of dollars, and it really works well, And if let's say they took $100,000 and put it into it and bought 100 plots because it's about $1,000 a node right now, that could be something that is sustained, that they could take another wallet, move over the funds that they're getting and gaining from that wallet to build up the treasury. Then they could use that for manual burns, burn off some of the tokens, and having the money in the treasury as well. You have the money coming in, burning off some of the supply, which in turn takes the price up a little bit as well. I don't expect them to do a $2 million burn or anything like that. That would be ridiculous. You're just giving exit equity at that point. But you guys could look into governance tokens as well. There's projects where you can purchase the governance tokens or become, they could purchase into the actual founders nodes of things like Ethereum. Ethereum founders nodes right now are paying out about $55,000 a day. So, those are a little out of the price range at the moment for anybody. But if we could do governance tokens or founders nodes based off of some of the, AVAX, if they purchase 2,000 AVAX, they can have a founders node on AVAX that pays out right now about $28,000 a day. So just an idea. I wanted to throw that out there. Hopefully this helps. I don't plan on selling anything for at least 6 months to help you guys out. I don't want to burn any money out of the project. I want to let it ride. So we appreciate you guys getting on here and having this voice chat with everybody.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. Yeah, I've talked quite a bit about Horde, and just like I said last week, they are a very good protocol. They've been holding up better than just about anybody else in this current market. So you're never going to find me like hating on another protocol. To be honest, that's just not my style. But we are so different that it would literally take us to, during this migration, kill the current Polar token, go to a version 2 Polar token, restart a new liquidity pool, and hope that the demand in a bear market is enough to overcome the sell-offs, which is what Horde is dealing with now. Is they had so much demand the first month and a half, and even now because they're getting all the free attention here from everybody, that they still have that demand coming in. And if you don't have demand coming in, your liquidity manager pool will go to zero. It has to, right? Where else does that money come from? And that poses a whole nother set of issues. So I think it's a great theory. Good on them for creating that back when they did. But I don't think it's an effective solution to change a protocol to what Horde is doing currently, unless you're willing to very much risk it and accept that it could totally fail. And I don't think we're quite at that point just yet.
No. And I don't want you guys to change the Horde. The point of that was to take a portion of the money and invest into a project like Horde that has an algorithmic type of stable project that does pay out a certain return. But you have to look at the long term. Is it going to last the 6 months that it's going to take for you to return that money back into the treasury and then start getting a gain? And at that point, is it too little, too late kind of thing as well? So, there's just trying to throw out some ideas and spitballing with you guys. I've been in the crypto verse for quite some time. I trade several millions of dollars through crypto each year. So I kind of see what's been dying and what's been surviving, and I just wanted to throw my ideas out there. I appreciate you listening to me, and hopefully this thing will take off. You guys have a wonderful day.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Great information there. Great discussion. I do think that, the whole point of what he was getting at is we do need to get more creative to get money in. And if the demand's not there, we shouldn't just roll over and say demand's not there. We do need to find other ways to bring money into the protocol. And that's kind of what we've been doing with the building of the game, the things that Enor's been releasing on that end, stuff like that. And obviously we've talked a lot about Polar Guardian. We've talked about the VC, things like that there also are beneficial. But why stop there? If you are able to find something that is able to directly benefit, even to the point of like, hey, whatever the case might be. I know someone was kind of like a little foo-foo on like even a simple merch idea. It's like, yeah, it's not going to change the big picture, but anything that you could throw in if you implement the strategy correctly is a positive, right? So if you say, hey, any of the earnings from this go directly to a burn, that's a good thing. Whether it's 100,000 tokens or 1 million tokens, it doesn't really matter. It's still somewhat of a positive direction. And we can't get caught up in the whole idea that if we can't fix it overnight, then we shouldn't fix it. You know what I mean? So there's a lot that we do need to work on our end, which I think could be done on many different levels, and that'll ideally be something that we can get into sooner rather than later, because nobody likes to be in a downtrend. And even if we just stayed stable, that's good enough for me at this point. Allow us to grow, allow us to reestablish, and then take off when the time is right. But nevertheless, I'd rather us trend up than down, very clearly, just as anybody else here would. So I'll kind of go through some of these AMA questions that are in our AMA Questions Weekly channel. If you are willing to speak and wanting to speak, obviously just request to speak and I'll bring you up here live. If you would like to type out a question, just simply go into our AMA Questions Weekly channel on our Discord, type them out from there. I do know that there is a Twitter Spaces going on. I can't really engage with that and engage with you guys without the echo effect, and there's a delay. So I will need to figure out a bit more on how to manage that one, but at least they can hear us. That's a good thing. So, Brewdad, could a staking methodology similar to what EMP Money does with their detonator be used by requiring daily access to claim or compound? It might be in line with some of the other mechanisms I've heard talked about for version 4.0. I have not dug into the entire aspects of that EMP Money mechanism, but I have heard that it's pretty good, right? So I've seen videos on it. I've considered investing in it. Right as I was about to is when they had that little bit of an issue come up with their protocol, but that they got it resolved. So good on them from there. So I personally haven't engaged too much into the in-depth research on that, but I think that falls in line with kind of what our previous discussion was. It's finding ways to bring in some aspect of new money into the protocol, whether it be via a difference in our fundamentals or just investing in something that will bring more return to us. AR Nev DM2, what is happening promotion-wise to get new people into the project? So I've talked about marketing in many of ways, and every time we go into a downtrend in crypto, all you're going to hear is when marketing, why are we not marketing more? I think that is a very, very valid concern. But I've also seen it very, very directly and very personally that you could throw in $100,000 into YouTube videos into this bear market and not get anything from it. Nothing. You maybe break even at best. So you have to be very careful when you're going to market it. If you're trying to market, I've used an analogy before that made sense that I just made up on the top of my head, but I'm not going to do it right now. So let's say you're trying to market like something that is no longer in demand at that point in time, when there's no need for erasers and pencils because everyone's using a laptop in a classroom when you're trying to sell them erasers and pencils, right? They're not going to want it. But when there's a demand for erasers and pencils because now there's a written exam that needs to come up in the next couple of weeks, then maybe they're going to be willing to buy those erasers and pencils at that point, right? So you do have to be somewhat strategic in how you're going to market it and how much money you're going to throw in at different times. Nevertheless, that does not mean that we're just not going to market, that is a null and void discussion. I think that there are ways to do it that'll still benefit the communication line. Just make sure that Polar is out there. And the number one way, I've had people ask, well, what can we do to help Polar? You guys are our number one version of marketing. So if you're just out there engaging on Twitter, commenting about things, getting people involved in our Discord, having productive conversations in the Discord for those who elect to come in and not have productive conversations. That's the organic marketing that we need to be doing right now in the bear market that gives us that opportunity to grow bigger and better than ever before on the back end of it. Because quite frankly, if somebody comes onto our Twitter and all we have is a bunch of haters that are not even involved in the protocol anymore or just willing to let the things die, and same thing with Discord that you have just flooded with toxicity, guess who's not going to be investing in Polar? That person that just came in and saw your discussion. So keep that in mind. I don't need you to be blind, love supporters no matter what. I love to have the harder questions asked. But if you're just going to spew toxicity, just keep in mind that you are going to directly damage the potential for new investors down the road. So that's on a real discussion. If you don't like that, I'm sorry, but I'm not really that sorry. So keep that in mind there. Organic marketing at this period of time is the way to do it. First and foremost, as we navigate through the other aspects of it. Let's see as we go up here. Barbie Boy, well, the hard caps be extended. Hard caps will come up soon, next week or so, for some of the tiers. I know Enor has mentioned that there could be a possibility to expand the hard caps just a little bit. I think it's going to mostly depend on how quick we can get out this version 4.0. I think that'll be helpful. I don't know if it's going to solve every problem, but that could be a thing there. If we needed to increase demand, And just as that's into the protocol, obviously increasing the hard caps is a very easy thing to do. So I think that could be a potential thing that could occur. Let's see. From Quirk, Gluon Plasma Donor. Long time Polar Boy, first time AMA question poster. 1. Could we institute Polar USDC liquidity? Why or why not? 2. Shall we attain some GPUs and some rigs mining Flux or ZC or ETC or those coins? Basically validator mechanisms, master nodes, stuff like that for different aspects of it. So yes, and why not is a larger question, right? So a Polar USDC liquidity mining, I kind of assume you mean like a pool or a farm, and a farm will be difficult if those who have experience with farming. It not only can increase emissions, but there's also quite some room for major losses if one token goes up or down. Using a stable on the side is beneficial, but if Polar continues to go down, that is still a problem. Single side staking is generally safer with these kind of tokens, but that also creates opportunity for more emissions. So you got to consider that into the aspect as well. Maybe like a single side staking with a lockup. I don't know if people would, want to get into that, but that could be a way to, we are going to have a little bit more emissions from it, but at least we're not going to see the daily sales. That kind of stems all the way back to that initial commenter we had in here that went into some of the aspects of reducing the sales per day and spread them out a little bit. That could be something you look into to at least create some new incentive for people to purchase a token, which is always a good thing there. So as far as the actual mining rigs are concerned, right now they are not super prosperous. I think anyone who is using a mining rig right now can attest to the fact that as of right now, they are not earning what they earned 1 year ago, quite a bit less, maybe 1/10 less, 1/10 of what they were rather, so 90% less, things like that. Master nodes are a great thing, validator nodes like that. I did mention yield nodes before. They basically invest in a bunch of different validator nodes. Safer, I guess to say. It's also, you can go onto I think it's masternodes.com and you can get into all of them yourself. They are a pretty decent investment opportunity and they seem to do very well in these bear markets and historically have. So that could be a decent option there. So there are pros and cons to both. I think we do need to look further into those. That's a great question. And I'll transition right to Muggles. I'll bring you up here live. How's it going, man?
Hey, how you doing, Shiv, right?
I'm doing pretty well. How are you?
Right, pretty good. Yesterday we talked about the my Russian roulette thing. I'm not even going to bring that up for at least another month or so. I want to see what happens with version 4.0. Definitely excited about it. But I did want to ask about the lottery. There's a burn node feature in the lottery. Is that true? Burn node?
Yeah, so I've seen that option there. I have not personally looked into it a whole lot, but I assume that's what it means is burn node, as in you just exchange your node for the tokens.
Right. I have a little problem with that. Obviously, no one's gonna burn Usweo or an Everest, but I mean, people would burn a Fuji for because it's not worth 250 Polar or 200 Polar. And the problem I have with that is, why don't I just buy a Fuji and then burn it? So I could buy a Fuji for 35 Polar and then put it into a lottery. And instead of paying 250 for the lotto, I could just pay 35 or however much a Fuji is. So I think that burn node thing is a little bit dicey. You're talking about extra wallets. You could do that. So you gotta watch out with that burn node feature. If you could just buy a Fuji and then just put it into the lottery, that's you're getting away with a little bit less. I mean, do you understand what I'm saying with that?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I don't think it operates that way, but I didn't test it myself. So I would assume it would operate very much like the level ups, where it'll require you to have an equal amount in tokens value, right? So in that case, if it were 35, then you would need 8 of them, because 7 times 35 would not be, that'd be 245, right? So that's how I would assume that it would go. Now, again, I didn't test it. So if there is a bug in there that allows you to just exchange one Fuji for 250 Polar, then obviously that's not great. So somebody please let me know if that is the case, and we can help resolve that as well.
Yeah, I was definitely interested in that. Because obviously no one's gonna do a tier 4, tier 5 for that. But also let me just transition to. I want to know: is it about 250,000 tokens being given out rewards daily?
So I think it's more than that. See, I had a write up a while back. So
I mean, when you
okay,
include tax and everything.
yeah. For this, since there was a change in the missions before, it was 264,000 just off of the Everest themselves. That was before we reduced the emissions the last time, and that was at that current node count. So with all of them, including Olympus, Everest, and all the way down, I assume it's still well over 250,000. I know Rudy had a decent calculator and a format that showed us exactly how many, but I would assume it is more
Yeah,
than 250.
right. Yeah, obviously that's exactly why our prices are going to go up because our buys are not even close to that right now. We're not the new kid on the block anymore. We're not giving 3.3, 3% for an Everest. So, hopefully this version 4.0 is going to change things because we definitely need more new money in here in order to counteract 250,000 tokens per day. I mean, that's difficult to overcome, and that's one of the reasons I talked about my Russian roulette strategy, where you get rid of half the nodes, which I know a lot of people won't like. But I mean, let's see what happens in a few months of where we stand with the pricing with the version 4.0, and then look into different options because obviously every node project like ours is struggling and nothing's working for them. And if we're going to do the same thing, like a node decay, like in version 4.0, I mean, I see that slowing down the rewards a little bit, but I don't see people coming in to buy when they see a node decay going on in the project. So I'm not 100% happy with 4.0, but I would love to see it. And I'm always been a Polar fan, but hopefully, we got some tricks up the sleeve there, and hopefully we get 4.0 out as quick as possible. Do you have a time frame on 4.0?
So I do not personally. Just what Enora said, where he has his team's working on it to get it out as quick and efficient as possible. If you know what I mean.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So I mean, we all should expect the price to steadily drop until something happens because I don't see a lot of people coming in and new money coming in right now. Uh, Another reason, obviously, is the bear market too. But there's not a lot of new money out there. But that's all I had to say. Thanks, Chip.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Good to talk to you. So I have thought of so I don't know if anyone saw his, worst case scenario, extreme situation, which I don't think are a bad discussion to have. So basically what he was saying is if all else fails, not tomorrow, but if all else fails, like last resort, basically play Russian roulette with nodes where they just poof, some of them take that shot to the head and vanish, right? And that would be quite extreme, and I think a lot of people would be less happy that could happen, but it would only occur at the the max node amount, which would be that 50,000. So whenever it reach hard caps is when it would do that, eliminate X%, stuff like that. I've also brainstormed of a last resort kind of option. Again, I want to preface this with this is not the plan. This is just me talking. This is just me discussing with you guys what's currently on the mind, but it's nothing that's going to be enacted or in the works or anything like that. But if we were to literally say, hey, we're going to take this new migration, we're going to get rid of the old token, start out a brand new token, new liquidity pool. You could even pair it with a stable at that point. That'd be very easy. And say, hey, we're going to open the token price at $1 again, or whatever the case might be. And then from there, you orchestrate the emissions to be more appropriate. And yeah, that means probably less, right? But that would say, hey, we could basically have a new start, a new fresh start, reset the emissions rate, reset the token price, reset everything as far as the token supply goes and all that good stuff. That would be, again, a relatively extreme change. That's not an easy thing to do for the community or for anything, because your current token would then be gone. It would be migrated to a version 2 and would have no liquidity paired to it, no liquidity pool. So that would be another kind of extreme strategy, right? So I don't think that is the best option, but it is an option. And I don't think it's the worst that could get out there as well. Again, not in the works, not in the plans, not in the orchestration. I wouldn't really stress about it. But worst case scenario, there are ways to keep the protocol alive, keep your nodes alive, keep the token, in that case, rebuild the token, rebuild the supply, use, whatever, you could say 100,000 from the treasury to establish that new liquidity pair and go from there. So that could be something I just was brainstorming yesterday, actually, about. Again, just brainstorming, just talking, just chilling. So Rocket, I'll bring you up here live. How's it going? Rocket, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
You are very, very, very quiet on my end.
All right, give me just a minute.
Okay, bye, Rocket. But whenever you come back, if your volume is better, I will bring you back up. So just to kind of, again, continue to branch off that last conversation, there are ways to do it that are still able to maintain all of our nodes, maintain our community, maintain the faith in everything, and basically reset how emissions are. Because quite frankly, Muggle just commented in the general chat, what's the difference if the price is 0.001? Because I have had the question as far as, can the price go to 0.00 infinite? With a liquidity pool, it cannot, but it can continue to go down, right? So it could go as low as whatever 0.0 whatever from there, right? So that is a possibility. So this would be kind of like a fresh restart, start clean, ideally with a new phase, new different things to introduce into the protocol itself. Because if you just start over with how you are now with lower emissions and reset the coin, that's not the best solution by any means, but there are ways to kind of have a major reset and still encourage the demand and take care of the community along the way. Rocket, bring it back up.
Trying this again.
I can hear you fine now. How are you?
Good. How you doing today?
Doing pretty well, thank you.
Good. So I like all the comments and ideas. I love that the community is super invested to take the time to think about these things. And a lot of them, as I was listening, sound like protocol ideas. I was wondering if you could touch more on, or if there's any update more inside of like the business side, long term, right? Because they're in order to create money, right, you need to create value. Sometimes that can be done through the protocols, some different investments, but some of the more business or investment side of things, the long-term revenue streams. I didn't know if there's any further thoughts or comments on that.
Yeah, so it's kind of the same thing before, where that long-term strategy is still in mind, right? But we do need to navigate a lot of the short-term, even though we still have that long-term aspect as like a priority in the back of the mind, right? So in my opinion, having a true revenue share system is ideal, but it's not ideal to have that when there's 50,000 nodes, for example, right, at least from day one, because it would be very, very low returns. So you have to find a way to build up to that effectively, even if it is a transition off where emissions are reduced, rewards are reduced, and then you just kind of keep them stable, get into a new revenue share model, and then allow that to branch off naturally over the course of 6 months, a year, 2 years, whatever it might be, so that there is a true vision in mind. I know that was the initial strategy, but a lot of the major downswing has changed a lot of that as well. So we do need to take care of the here and now while still keeping that longer term business vision in mind. And I think that's the most effective way to handle problems, is you have to play chess at the same time you play checkers in business, where you think about today and tomorrow, but also next year and down the road.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I'd just like to know that it's still kind of the long term, because as I was thinking about too, you mentioned like the single-sided staking and lockup. There's another project that is kind of interesting to me because they use that model. They're not a node project, but they do offer that single-sided staking and additional rewards for doing that. Interestingly enough, they pay out their additional rewards in like not their native token. They actually pay it out in the stables that they bring in from some of their other business related types of activity. So it's kind of interesting in that sense, right? It doesn't add any more sell pressure to the token since they're paying out in other rewards for the additional lockup. So there's not necessarily more emissions, but of course you need those additional revenue streams to kind of drive those additional rewards. And the way they have it set up is basically it's a year-long accumulation phase, right? And they're paying pretty high rewards. They're paying like 2.3% a day. So they'll have like a year-long accumulation, but they've also got like some burns and stuff all planned into that, and kind of managing the circulating supply. So it's just kind of interesting how they approach some of that. And so even like you were saying, maybe we look into that. It's something that we could at least kick around, because I think for the folks of us, like I know one of the guys talking earlier mentioned, he doesn't plan to sell for the next 6 months. A lot of us have gotten in early, and I know a lot of us haven't actually sold any tokens, right? And so I think something like that, where it's like, yeah, you are committed to a long term in this project. You see it being, long term success rather than just like a quick get rich and go. Could be an interesting one to explore.
Yeah, I think that's a great conversation to have, and it's something you do need to think about. As far as offering other tokens, you either need to be bringing in other tokens via those other revenue streams, or you would have to change and say, hey, we're going to take half Polar and half DAI or USDC.E or whatever your stable is, or whatever your other token is, for the creation of new nodes. Because otherwise, if you're just using Polar and then you're doing the same thing, the protocol would be selling the Polar for DAI and then distributing DAI. That doesn't really solve anything, to be honest. So there are different ways to do it that are either correct or gimmicky, and in my opinion, even 2.3% a day is way too high. And I know some of ours are pushing that point. I still think some of ours are way too high when you talk about actual sustainability. So, things like that we do have to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, definitely. And that was why I brought that one up, because they're not actually they're not selling to buy stable to put it in there. They've got external revenue streams entirely. And so that would be more of our long term, right? Where we're actually, for example, I know we did a multi-sig recently, which is an external payment, right? And if we have a lot more Polar Guardian, type of engagements or something like that, where we're pulling in entirely external money revenue streams that don't come to us in Polar, right? They come in the form of, other stables or something. But certainly, without doing that kind of a mechanism, we could also use those for buybacks, burns, whatever it be, or switch to long term, like you mentioned earlier, like long term, transition over that more of a reward share kind of a thing.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a great conversation to have, and that's probably the more effective way to do it as we kind of navigate into the future.
Well, sounds good. It was good talking to you, man.
Hey, good to talk to you again. Appreciate you, man. Yes, that's another just great topic. I know I even mentioned those are very high rates. Let's see, people are probably not going to like my personal opinion, but I think 0.5% daily ROI is that point where you can actually get that to be sustainable. Again, I will say that that's not in the plans or not whatever, but that's my personal opinion, is right about that 0.5% is the one that seems to be relatively ideal. I think it was even Strong that had 0.5%, if I'm not mistaken, and we still see what happened to them. So, things like that to keep in mind. You do have to have real business models, real revenue streams, and real demand. If you're missing any of those variables, it does become increasingly difficult to navigate. So we do need to solve multiple fronts on that point there. So great conversation to have, even if some of that I might have said is not necessarily ideal to everybody who is listening. Again, I'm not saying that we're doing anything like that, so please don't get mad at me or think that I'm promising something that I'm not, because I am not. So, if my Discord on my phone will load, I will go into more of the questions, make sure I didn't miss anything in the general chat, because sometimes I do. Looks like the general chat's doing mostly okay. All right. Sweet. So I'll go over some of the questions here. If anybody would like to speak, obviously just request to speak, and we will go forward from there. Babushka, where do you see the price at the end of the year? Same thing as Snow Tiger's question there. I don't love to predict price, but we would rather go up than down, of course. Let's see. Why did Spring remove Polar from their bio? I I don't know. Enor's on there, multi-sig. I've been very clear with you guys that I've been not involved with Spring, so I don't really know. I'm not in their Discord, unfortunately. So I do know that, or I believe that Salty stepped down from the advisor role, if I'm not mistaken. Enor mentioned he got, I think, 4,000 for our treasury for being on the multi-sig. Let's see. And they moved over to the Binance Smart Chain. So I don't know. I'm not overly spun up on everything involving Spring. Hard caps we've already answered. Is there a way to see what special nodes were sold for? Like in the marketplace, all of the above? I'm not too sure what you mean there, but I think a record of them would be kind of cool in some aspect. That was a week ago. So, what's up, Link? Shout out to you. You might, I would assume you know more about what's going on with Spring than I would. So, good timing on that end, because I honestly have no idea. All I know is that I got some money for the Polar Treasury for being on the multi-sig. But shout out to you. Hope you guys are doing well over there. And I think you guys had a good pre-sale yesterday or the day before, so good job on that end. Babushka, any plans in the future to put more games on the DApp like poker, blackjack, or whatever? So I think the casino aspect of it will be through that ChainBet organization. They're still pretty small. They're trying to build some things up. I think there could be a lot to come from that, but that could take some time to get off the ground. I have said this very many times that I love gambling. I love table games. I love sports betting. That is kind of my little realm. I would, if any of you are in the Vegas area, hit me up. I'll find a way out to Vegas. Trust me. And I will go hit up them games with you. So that's all I really know on that end. ChainBet's going to be our way to do that. There are ways to gamify our DApp, which is what we'll be doing with that version 4.0. And I'll take a break from that and bring up Mirko. Mirko, whenever you accept the invite, you will be live. If you do accept the invite, I know I had you hanging up there just a little bit. What's going on, Mirko?
What's up, man? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine. How are you doing?
Perfect. I'm good. And you?
Doing very, very well. Another sunny day down here where I am.
That's nice. Yeah, I joined a little bit late. Maybe I missed something. What a quick questions. After the new phase go online, the old NFTs are still nodes, right?
Correct. Yep. Everything that you have on there, those NFTs and node, the terminology for us is pretty interchangeable. I know it's not always that way, but even in version 4.0, your nodes and your NFTs will still be that same, yield acquiring and distributing device.
Okay, perfect. And second question is, do you plan to list Polar on any new DEXs, decentralized exchanges like Swapsicle or whatever?
Yeah, so that's another great conversation to have. So obviously we are much on Trader Joe right now. So in order to get on different decentralized exchanges or even centralized exchanges, you do have to generally need some form of requirements for the centralized exchanges, stuff like that. But we'd also need to establish another liquidity pool. So if we were to use a, whatever other decentralized exchange, there still needs to pull liquidity from there in order to orchestrate that exchange purchases and sales, which is possible. It's very doable. I know right now we're pretty good on Trader Joe, and I think that's going to be where we'll hang out for a little bit here, but I wouldn't be opposed at all to getting onto different exchanges into the future.
Perfect. That's it. Thank you.
Hey, appreciate you, man.
Good luck.
Oop, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you there, but hey, shout out to you. Thank you for coming up. I think that was your first time up here, so love having the new speakers up here as well as all of our regulars. So it's always a good thing to hear from the new and from those who've been involved with us for a long time. From a Cavadoodles, off topic, but what subject field of study might be most beneficial to crypto, blockchain, understanding and knowledge, computer science, statistics? So this is kind of way off topic of Polar, but you can take Solidity courses and kind of gain a better understanding of the actual code side of it. My educational background is in economics. I think that is way more resembling to cryptocurrency than people want to admit, because finance is finance. Trends are trends. Supply and demand is supply and demand. And if you are listening to my AMAs, I often bring up different economic variables and different economic theories that apply directly to even the small market cap of Polar, just as it would with Bitcoin or with the S&P 500 or with whatever. So I think finance is finance. It's a very good thing to understand that. Understanding that emotion is not always the best driver of investing, but it does seem to be something that we get caught up in, whether it's in mainstream finance or otherwise, because people are emotionally attached to dollar bills. So once you can kind of figure that out and break down how all that orchestrates in your brain, are able to invest logically, but also with a vision of actual returns over time due to future value kind of formulas, then I think you will have a good understanding of finance. If you would like to learn the code side, there are plenty of Solidity programs out there that'll give you a better understanding on all of that. I know my homie Narek was in here earlier. He might still be, but he's been engaging in that, the Solidity side of it recently, and I think that's a great thing to do if you're just an interest in the blockchains and crypto in general. Not a bad skill to have. Allows you to better read contracts, stuff like that there. So I think that answered most of the questions in the AMA Questions Weekly. Oh wait, is there a hard cap on the token supply from Crypto Torch? Sorry, I missed yours there. Rocket, you'll come up here in just 1 second. What is the projected inflation schedule? So Crypto Torch, I would like to go into that here. So obviously we were at 1 million token supply for quite some time, and we are now at 3 million. That's not a good thing, and it's not necessarily by design of the protocol. So we've had to increase and mint additional Polar tokens in order to pay out the claims rate, which means that the emissions out are greater than the demand in, and that is not a good thing. I think as long as emissions out, as in the claims out, is greater than the demand in, then it's very likely that we will continue to see additional minted tokens, and you could reduce that by many of the ways we've discussed here today. I don't love it. I don't love seeing that inflationary aspect. I think that is, it's necessary for the short term, but it does create some issues in the long term. So I would love to be able to start working on those as we navigate into the future. So things like that are very important. I would not want us to be like a $10 million token supply, because that obviously dilutes the token price by much more. So we would like to reverse that over time. We do need demand to increase or emissions to decrease in order to effectively strategize different ways using that same economic theory I was speaking of before to do so. But Rocket, you are back. What's going on, man?
Hey, I forgot my question earlier. I was wondering about the version 4 and some of the more gamified aspects of it. Are those features that Enor had kind of thrown out some ideas? Are those pretty much set and like those are going to be there, or are they still in consideration? Are any of those going to be kind of brought before the community? What does that look like?
So as far as everything that Enor has put in the announcements, that is what's currently in the developmental side. The things that I've just kind of talked about, that's not necessarily that, but those are things that we could add in the version 4.0 because we're having a full migration. But I think what he's gone into there with his announcements is kind of the plan of action. So I think that is what is a good thing to expect, at least on a base level.
Gotcha. When do we think we'll have a better understanding of like the level of, active gaming required, and or, I know there's like some element of like being able to attack the nodes and stuff like that. So I mean, obviously that's kind of a level of things that some of us investors didn't necessarily consider getting in because it wasn't really on the roadmap. Just kind of planning for, okay, what are we dealing with in the mid to short term here?
Yeah, so that's another great question there, and I've seen that pop up a few times. And as far as everything that Enor is in his head of like the amount of time that you have to put into it, it's not going to be like substantial. Like you're not going to sit here and play this game every day in order to keep your rewards, because that's just unfair and it's unrealistic. We all have lives, we have families, we have other things outside of Polar that we do need to take into account. I think all he's looking to do there is to keep that connection to the dApp, to the protocol. Because if you're sitting here, we've seen many a times, I've even had of last week, hey, where do my nodes go? I had bought them back in January. It's like, yeah, dog, you missed 2 full migrations, right? So we need to have some kind of engagement with those who are involved in the protocol, whether it's a direct or an emotional or indirect or whatever the case might be. I think having some sort of engagement is a great thing. There will be a lot more information released as the Solidity side of it starts coming together and we're able to actually implement these things and say, hey, this is for sure what we can do. Then we can tease different information about it because we know that we can actually do it at that point. So I would expect that in the coming days and weeks. As far as the actual full-blown update, I'm not too sure how long that's going to take. We have multiple teams working on it, but there were some issues even with this smaller update that do need to be resolved. So I think some of that needs to be taken into account while we navigate how we're going to put out the bigger update version of it.
Cool. Thanks. That's super helpful because definitely, like I'm in the Discord every day and interact with the protocol pretty much every day or every other day, kind of even just watching all the details. But, if that were to get to like, hey, you need half an hour a day every day, just wouldn't be sustainable. But I'm glad that they're taking that into consideration. So appreciate it.
Yeah, hey, no problem. That's another great question there because even quite frankly, I would not want to be putting an hour a day into a game right now. I just, I value my time. I value my time with the people I care about. And then obviously the investments I like to be able to engage with, but not all day, every day, of course, or else you'll go crazy. So I definitely feel you there.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Hey, I appreciate you, man. All right, sweet. And I know if you are still listening in the Twitter, I did not go to you guys. I am very sorry. But with the delay and with the other aspects of me being able to try to pull you in and then hearing the echo, I don't think I was going to be very effective on this end. Maybe if I did it the other way, it would work. I don't know. I do have to get with Oxy and maybe we could run a couple trials of different aspects there to see if we can get it up and running. But we hopefully were to answer your questions. If you are on the Twitter and you would like to have questions, jump into our Discord anytime and we'll be more than happy to facilitate it for you until we can get it easier because I would love to be able to engage with the Twitter Spaces Live and with the Discord Live. I think that's another great asset for us. So we'll get that resolved as quickly and effectively as possible. Let me kind of go through here, make sure I didn't miss anything in the general chat because some people will start asking questions in there as well as the AMA Questions Weekly. AMA Questions Weekly looks like I've gotten up to date for the most part. Let's see about the general chat. Some people will get involved with there and post questions on all that end. As I filibuster just a little bit. Yeah, risk versus reward of small market cap. I don't think we need to go a whole lot into that there. Chronic kill, yeah, DeFi is a wild west of finances, but it's still finances. And I think that's what we all need to remember is you can even invest in the S&P 500 and lose money. Or here's a better example. Without having an ETF of all of those top 500 companies, if you were to just invest in the bottom 5, you would have the greatest chance of the highest reward. You also have a chance of those bottom 5 becoming nothing. So pull that even as a bigger picture. The smaller market cap, the bigger chance for a major win or for a potential for loss, of course. So that's not the goal, but that is the reality of finances, and we will continue to build and orchestrate more for Polar. Can the sell pressure be changed to a buy pressure when you compound in version 4.0? That's another great question, Muggle. So right now we are going to make it a little bit more efficient with the next major upgrade. But right now the sell pressure is very minimal. It's 5% that goes to the treasury that's swapped out for a stablecoin. And then there's a 5% that goes to liquidity, which is mostly with Polar, right? So it's half Polar, half of our AVAX, which is a liquidity pair. So it's not a significant sell pressure, but it would be nice to have a total buy pressure. For it to be a sole buy pressure, by the way, you would have to have the purchases in stablecoin. And then you would purchase with stablecoin. We would buy the Polar needed and move on from there, which could be a way to do it once compounding is effectively eliminated via the aspect of hard caps, right? That would be a theory. So I'll have to look in a little bit more on that and how the hard cap structure goes into the distance. But I think those are things that we can facilitate in a much better way as we navigate forward, because we can take things that have worked from others, we can orchestrate new things to try to create a very new and hopefully successful protocol. And I think both of which are aspects that we need to look forward to as we navigate into the future. So great question there, man. And as we are coming to a close, I think I've answered all the questions of the AMA questions. If I missed your question, I do sincerely apologize. This wasn't really a question. This is from last week, but our website does need to be some updatings as far as grammatical senses, and I totally feel you there. All right, so I think I've answered everything there. And with that being said, I will be coming to a close, going once for those who are going to request to speak, going twice for those who are going to request to speak. I don't even see any typing. And 3 times. So shout out to you guys. Shout out to all the new community members and to the mods who have been working very hard throughout the week to keep the chats as positive as possible. Appreciate you, those who are engaging with the community, whether it's via chat or via the AMAs or via just your general life. You guys are the lifeblood of Polar, as always, as I've been saying for months and months. Community is everything for Polar, and we will never forget that as we continue to grow and build and facilitate new aspects of the protocol. So shout out to you guys. Thank you again for this weekly AMA here with us. Last second reminder, next week's will be on Wednesday. I know we're Tuesday right now, but it'll be Wednesday, the 15th at 8 p.m. UTC. So same time, one day later. So I'll see you all then. I'll probably put a little reminder up in the Discord so we can all facilitate that accordingly. So appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon. See you in the chats. Thank you again for the AMA this week.